This video is an introductory case study to Catalonia and Catalan nationalism. Two disclaimers before I go any further. First of all, it is just an overview, and for those who are more knowledgeable of the topic, you may find that it's lacking in detail in some areas. And secondly, my Spanish and Catalan pronunciations aren't very good, and so again, if you are fluent in either of those languages, apologies in advance. Catalonia is an area of northeast Spain, but historically will also include southeast France, and you can see the darker green shading on the map there. So today, Catalonia is a region of the nation-state of Spain, but the nation of Catalonia crosses that border between the two countries. The area in modern-day France that we can see shaded was ceded to France in a treaty in the 17th century. The region of Catalonia has its own language. Roughly a third of Catalonians speak the language as their first language, whereas 45% speak Spanish as their first language. And Catalonia has its own flag. You can see the 6 flags that are arranged there. The first, which was used historically, is flag number 1. And that flag is known as the Senyera, which is the official flag of the Union and has been used by both pro and anti-independence movements and individuals in Catalonia. The second flag that you can see is the blue star, and that became the symbol of Catalan separatism, and that was inspired by the independence of both Cuba and Puerto Rico from the Spanish Empire. They took the creators of the flag took the blue star to symbolise a desire for future Catalan separatism from the Spanish nation state. And then the third flag that you can see is the red star. That was adopted by left-wing Catalonian nationalists, particularly socialists and communists, and became more popular from the 1960s. Flag number 4 is the flag of the city of Barcelona, which is the sort of the hub of Catalonia, certainly in terms of population and culture. And speaking of Barcelona, its capital, flags 5 and 6 are often or sometimes seen by the football clubs of the region. Now, of the 2 football clubs, Barca and Espanyol, Barca is the football club that is historically been associated with the Catalan independence movement. You can see Barca's colours in flag number 5, and what you'll see more rarely is flag number 6, adopted by Espanyol, which the other key football club in the region, which doesn't necessarily have those historical ties to Catalan independence and separatism. The first usage of the term Catalan or Catalonia stems back to the 12th century, and it was a historically wealthy region. Some historians would argue that a national identity of the Catalan people doesn't emerge until the 14th century. In the 19th century, the ideas of key thinker number 3, von Herder, begin to inspire Catalan nationalists. They began to define the cultural differences between the Catalonian people, between Catalans and the Spanish or people from other regions of Spain, and not just cultural practices, but of course in separate language added to that identity. So von Herder's ideas inspired some Catalan nationalists in the 19th century. The first Catalan political party is the Lliga Regionalista in 1901. That's considered quite a conservative movement. It merged with other movements into the Solidaritat Catalana in 1907. So at the turn of the 20th century, we've got a conservative nationalist movement. And the elites of Catalonian businesses and society tended to warn against independence from Spain, primarily because of the negative economic consequences that would have. And so for those more conservative nationalists, what they wanted is a separate identity and autonomy from Spain, but not full independence. And of course, that wasn't enough for all Catalans. And so radical groups emerge. We get in the 1920s two groups, Catalan Action and Catalan State in the 1920s. And Catalan Action was inspired by the thinking of Charles Maurras, who very clearly and quite narrowly defined who constitutes the nation, which people make up the nation. And so Catalan Action was inspired by Maurras's thinking in that sense. I'm going to give you a very brief run through now of some of the key events of the 20th century. The other group that I spoke about on the last slide was Catalan Action, but Catalan State was founded by Francesc Macià, who you can see there. And in 1926, he attempted an invasion of the region from France to inspire a popular uprising, but the fighters didn't even make it across the Spanish border. Macià was jailed for 2 months, but it did increase sympathy for the cause for Catalan independence. In 1931, a left-wing group, the Republican Left of Catalonia, the ERC, is formed. It was made up of the former Catalan state and other smaller political movements, and Macià became the leader of that movement. When elections were held in the region, Macià, his party, the ERC, won those elections, and he declared a Catalan republic. The new Spanish government knew they had to act, but pressured him into accepting a less severe arrangement and accepting Catalonia as an autonomous regional government instead. And so that was the status of Catalonia before the Spanish Civil War. It was an autonomous region within Spain. That government was abolished after Franco's victory in the Spanish Civil War, and his fascist dictatorship was designed to quell any form of opposition, and Catalan nationalism was a significant threat to his rule. And so the movement was essentially driven underground until Franco's death in 1975. The president of the region in 1939, we can see pictured at the bottom, Luis Campagne. He fled to France in 1940 when France fell to Nazi Germany. The French authorities handed him over to Franco. He was tortured, he was sentenced to death by firing squad, and he famously refused to be blindfolded when he faced the firing squad, and his final words were a shout per Catalunya when the bullets were flying towards him. So until Franco's death in 1975, the movement was very much underground, and it was certainly a dangerous thing to be a Catalan nationalist. Leaders of the movement didn't return from exile until after Franco's death. It was only then, in 1977, when the regional Catalan government was restored and Catalonia was officially declared an autonomous community, and that was confirmed in a referendum. I'm hoping now to give you a brief overview of what the modern day Catalan independence or nationalist movement stands for. The ERC, the Republican Left of Catalonia, they refuse the term nationalism. They prefer pro-independence. So it's quite a broad movement with very different views and political parties within it, and I hope that on this slide I'm going to give you an idea of that. So the two main political parties are the Democratic Convergence of Catalonia and the Democratic Union of Catalonia. But we've also got, as I mentioned before, the ERC, the Republican Left of Catalonia. We've also got the Catalonian Solidarity for Independence movement. What we find is that although there is certainly a distinct Catalonian identity, there isn't an agreement on whether or not there should be an independent Catalan state. Most people would accept that it's a minority of more radical supporters that want a separate independent state. But we'll look at a referendum in 2017 that might suggest that view can be challenged. So in 2006, there was a referendum to further the authority of the autonomous Catalonian government. 73% of people voted yes for the increased powers for that regional government, but only 49% of voters turned out. And that was unusually low for the region. Historically, Catalonian elections have mattered to the people and have inspired high turnouts. In 2012, there was a significant demonstration in Barcelona calling for Catalonian independence. And according to the Spanish authorities, 600,000 people attended. According to the organisers of the demonstration, it was 2 million people. I think it's probably best to meet somewhere in the middle, and we'll say over 1 million people attended that demonstration. In 2013, there was a similar demonstration known as the Catalan Way, which was a human chain of 1.6 million people standing in a campaign for independence. In 2017, the regional Catalan government arranged a referendum which would be binding and on the topic of independence. And the Spanish government declared that planned referendum illegal and not in keeping with the Spanish constitution. The regional government, the Catalonian government, pressed ahead with plans to have the referendum in October 2017 anyway. So the Spanish government responded. They sent police officers from around the country to the region, and the plan was to stop people from voting and close polling locations. Ballot papers were seized and so were mobile phones. The Spanish authorities tried to get websites and apps shut down, websites and apps that were indicating where people could go and vote. And of course, to those advocating for Catalonian independence, they held this up as examples of the suppression of the state to deny the people to have their voice. The vote took place anyway on the 1st of October. Of those that voted on that day, 92% of people voted yes for an independent and separate Catalonian state, but only 43% of voters turned out. Supporters of the Catalan independence movement said that was either through the oppression and fear of the Spanish authorities trying to deny people the right to vote. The result was confirmed by the Catalan Parliament, who voted to confirm the result of the referendum. However, opposition parties who opposed the referendum and agreed with the Spanish authorities that the referendum was illegal refused to vote in that. According to the Spanish constitution, the regional government was dismissed because of its actions, and direct rule from Madrid was imposed. Elections were held again in December 2017 to elect a new regional Catalonian government, and the biggest vote share from any party was an anti-independence party who polled 25% of the vote. Now, in the parliament that we get at the end of the election, there are more pro-independence than anti-independence parties in there. But it was the first time in history that an anti-nationalist party had won the most votes in a Catalonian election. So we can see Catalonian nationalism is broad and diverse within the region itself. There are many different political parties and groups within the movement with various distinct aims, and there's no agreed strategy or goal for where this movement will head. There are groups that want Catalan independence that refuse the term nationalist. That may be a result of Spanish history and culture and what has been done in the name of nationalism. But it's also, we've got left-wing groups, we've got right-wing groups, we've got those that want an autonomous government with significant power, and then others who want complete separation from Spain. So what we can see is that within this movement itself, there are a broad range of opinions and aims. If you've seen the nationalism introduction video, you'll see that there are 3 paradoxes with nationalism. That nationalism is both peaceful and violent, both democratic and dictatorial, and it can look both forwards and backwards. And I think it's worth, at the end of a case study like this one, to consider which is most true, which way does Catalan nationalism go? And hopefully there'll be other videos with other case studies, Welsh, Irish or Scottish nationalism, where we'll be able to have similar conversations. If you're ever looking at a nationalist movement, I would always ask you to look at peace versus violence, democracy versus dictatorship, and looking forwards versus looking backwards. My opinion is that if you look at every A-level essay on nationalism, every single essay can be linked to these discussions. And so it's useful to have this conversation or to do this exercise whenever you look at a case study on nationalism. And so, peaceful or violent? In that brief research that I've done and then relayed in this video, I've got one isolated example of an attempted uprising across the French border, but actually, certainly in the modern day, we can see a vast arrangement of political parties working towards political autonomy. So for me, I think Catalan nationalism is more peaceful than violent. And then secondly, democratic rather than dictatorial. This was a movement that, again, has been able to express itself in the form of many different political parties and contest elections in that regional government. So I think we've got more peace than violence and certainly more towards democracy than dictatorship. And this is the one that I struggle with the most. I'm tempted to go more towards looking backwards than looking forwards. But for me, for these three paradoxes, I always find it most difficult to identify whether a movement looks backwards or forwards. I think it's looking more backwards than forwards, but I'm sure there'll be people that disagree with me, and feel free to, because this activity is basing it on your opinion, and as long as you're able to justify that, then go for it. So let me try and justify my opinion. Looking at modern day Catalonian nationalism, there are many different views of what the future should be for Catalonia. And actually somebody might say, well, because so many of those conversations are happening, then this type of nationalism is looking forwards. So people would be well within the rights to say that. But for me, I think what is Catalonian nationalism? It's a distinct identity and culture based on its own history and its own heritage and its own language. And it's a celebration of that Catalonian nation, what it means to be Catalan. And so I think it's looking backwards towards that distinction between Catalonia and the rest of Spain. But as I said, of those three paradoxes, that is the one that I've struggled with the most. I'm slightly more convinced to go with backward looking, but I'm sure that a persuasive case could be made for the opposite.